Hi and welcome to the channel. Today I am going to talk about how I set up my camera to aperture priority and why I use it, and also how I set up my camera to use back button focus and why I use it. So come along and enjoy this adventure. So about a month ago, I was at a person's house and a bunch of people from Audubon were invited there. And we were taking pictures of migrating birds, which was really exciting. We had a real serious lull in the activity. And a lot of people started coming up to me and asking me questions about their pictures. And a lot of people were saying, you know, my pictures are not very sharp, they're not crisp, they're not like your pictures I see on social media. And I said to them, I said, well, let's take a look at your settings. And I found that almost all of them were shooting in automatic, which is really not a good setting to shoot. Even if you're shooting in sport, because most of the people did a little bit of adjusting and they were shooting in sport. And the reason why it's not good is that, generally speaking, your aperture is going to be in the mid zone of your camera, so it's going to be f10, f9, f8, depending on what your lens is. And your shutter speed is not going to increase any more than 2,000th of a second. And to get this large aperture, or the small aperture to get enough light in to get the picture, it's going to ratchet up your ISO. And that's a main reason why a lot of people were not getting good pictures. Their pictures had too deep of a field of focus, so too much of the picture was in focus, so it kind of like distract from the actual bird that you were taking a picture of. And because they were shooting at such a high ISO, they were not getting the crisp, sharp images. They're getting a lot of grain or texture in their picture. So what I do is I shoot in aperture priority, and I shoot with my ISO in manual. Now last week I did a video on 5 settings you should have in your camera. There's a link above, there's a link below, check it out. But what I shoot is in aperture priority, and on the Canons it's AV. And what I'll do is, like today, I'm under this canopy here taking pictures of birds. It's a cloudy, overcast day, so I am definitely going to have to shoot at a higher ISO. So the first thing I do is kind of like just guess at it. So today I'm just going to guess at it, and I'm going to say 5,000 ISO. This lens is a kind of slow lens, so I have it opened all the way to 6.3, and I'm going to see what my shutter speed is. So what I do is I pick a tree that's kind of like in the gray tones, I focus on it, and that's going to give me a shutter speed of about 4 to 500ths of a second. When you're shooting a lens this long, that's not enough. You need to have a shutter speed about twice of whatever your focal length is. And even in some situations, that's not enough. But that's the minimum. You can get away with a little bit more when you're up on a tripod like this. So if I was photographing a bird that was very stationary, wasn't jumping around, I would definitely try and take a picture at 500ths of a second, not any slower than that, and just accept the fact that if they don't come out, I would delete them. But the first thing I do is I focus on the tree, I get my 500th of a second, which is not enough. And what I do is I'm going to adjust my ISO to 8,000. And that's going to give me the shutter speed I need. Now 8,000 is a little bit high ISO. This camera's really good with ISO. But if I would keep an eye on my shutter speed. And if my shutter speed started to go up to 3, 4, 5,000th of a second, I would start lowering my ISO so I would have less grain and less texture in my picture. So those are basically the settings I have, the settings I showed you last week and the settings I have here. And I am going to talk about back button focus in a second. I'm always hesitant about encouraging people to do back button focus, and the reason for it is that a lot of people just curse the idea of making the adjustment. You know, most people, when you buy a camera, you push the shutter halfway down and it focuses. When you're using back button focus, that's not what happens. You have to push on the button in the back of the camera and it focuses for you. And the advantage to that is that you can focus on something and then later take pictures. So let's say there's a bird that's on the side of a tree, you can focus on it and then start taking pictures without the camera readjusting the focus. And that's I think using the shutter button is when you get those situations where it focuses on the branch in front of the bird, the branch behind the bird. A lot of mistakes occur because it's constantly refocusing. The advantage of back button is that you can do that. You can have the camera constantly focusing, so if a bird's flying by, you just push the button down, put it on there, and just keep focusing. But you also have the option that if there's a woodpecker sitting on the side of a tree, you can just put the camera on there, focus on the bird, and just start taking pictures as the bird's sitting there on the side of the tree. That's the reason why I like it. I know that I've encouraged a lot of people to do this, and I have had people call me up almost in tears about how difficult it was to adjust to it. And I gotta tell you, when I first did it, I had a lot of problems with it, but as soon as you get over that hump, you'll never go back to using your shutter button. The other advantage to this is now you can use your shutter button, or the half focus shutter button, for something else. Like I use it for exposure. So when I push my shutter button halfway down, it exposes for what I'm focusing on. I use center point focus, which you would learn about my video last week. And this is one of the reasons why I like this. My camera is focusing with the back button, and the shutter button is doing the exposure. So I am utilizing two buttons to do it, instead of having a situation where the shutter button is doing focusing and not exposure, or doing both. You know, at least I can adjust that a little bit, and that gives you more control as to what you can do. And I'm going to show you how on this Canon how to do it. Well, the weatherman was incredibly wrong today. It's supposed to be raining all day today, and it's actually turned into a real nice sunny day. But to set the autofocus on this camera is really easy. So the first thing you do is you hit the Q in the back. And now Nikon, Sony, all these other manufacturers have incredibly similar systems. I'm only talking about this Canon. So I hit my Q on the back of the camera. That gives me the menu that I can adjust stuff. I hit the icon that looks like a camera. And the first thing I do is do my shutter. Now I can have autofocus, or I can have light metering, or I can have the autofocus locked. I'm going to select light metering so that it will, when I press the shutter halfway down, it does the light metering. The next button down is autofocus, which is the back button focus. On the Canon, it actually has a button that's marked as AF on. I select that. I select it to be on autofocus, and that's it. It's done. It's that easy, and it always amazes me how easy it is to do stuff. And I'm sure all the other manufacturers' systems are very similar to that. You're going to have to Google it or do whatever else. But doing those two things will really help your photography. I think taking control of your settings of your camera will definitely make you a better wildlife photographer. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to be, is have higher quality images that we can record, print, and display to other people. And I think a few setting differences will make a huge difference to your photography. And they're not that complicated. I mean, it's incredibly easy. These modern cameras are so easy to use. So I'm hoping you got something out of this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel, because that really helps us in YouTube world. Become a Patreon supporter. Your support allows us to keep doing this. My name is Leahy. I want to thank you for watching.